Lingua podcast live from Dessau is broadcast from Middle Deutschland and features all things languages. The show is hosted by our teachers, presenting students and guests from all walks of language learning experiences. Joining us today for the next episode of Lingua podcast live from Dessau is Joni. So Joni is currently in Canada. She has been working for Lingua Hale since 2009, right? Now you're back in Canada. How's Canada today?
Yeah, well, we're heading into a wonderful season. It's fall and the colors of the leaves are changing. So for the next weeks, we're going to just enjoy that time of year with the beautiful fall colors.
Okay.
Yeah. But I have to say it's not my favorite time of year, actually, because I always find it's in between cold and hot. So you never know whether to dress for summer or fall. But
so before you came to Germany in 2009, what were you doing?
Well, actually, I had a career in television.
Okay.
So I was a continuity writer for television at CBC Television.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this was before I had a change of heart where my heart told me, I want to be a teacher. Like I had always been told by my mom, you should be a teacher.
Okay.
And my little nephew said to me, you should be a teacher. And I was like, no, I want to be a teacher. And then one day I woke up and I said, you know what? I want to be a teacher.
Okay.
So I looked into teaching English as a second language. And I went there and they had their opening information session, and I signed up and they talked about different places you could teach in the world, like Taiwan or China, South Korea. And they were more focused on that. And I said, but I would like to teach in Europe.
Okay.
And they said, oh, it's very difficult. It'll never happen. I'm like, because they were supposed to train us and then place us, And
okay, so
they were
is this a Canadian organization?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, it's a Canadian organization.
Okay, like a teachers association or a teachers
call it. Yeah, so that we're teaching English as a second language. So
okay.
I was like, oh, So they kind of just kept pushing me towards, Asia or Taiwan. And I said, I would like to teach in Europe.
Okay.
And I found a way to do it. I don't even really know how it happened. It's just one day started sending things out. And one day into my email box came an email that said, you're looking for job teaching English in Europe. And then they just gave me a list of jobs.
Okay.
And so I started applying. I actually was offered jobs in different countries in Europe, in Luxembourg, Belgium, England, and Germany. And I was offered a job in South Korea, but I could never picture myself teaching in South Korea. When I tried to picture myself in the classroom, I couldn't. And so I said, I think I will take the job in Germany.
Had you traveled to Germany before?
Yes, I had traveled to Germany. You know how we do it after university, you go on a European tour, like 10 countries in 2 months or what have you.
Right.
But I always, because my middle name is German, Erica.
Okay.
The K. Ever since I was little, I was fascinated by things German. Like just was a big Germanophile.
Interesting.
So I had a lot of German friends. I'm the only one in my family that likes sauerkraut. I said, it's meant to be. I have to be in Germany.
Okay. So when you were getting the notifications or the job applications, did it come from Lingua Hale?
Yeah, and then so I pursued that job,
Hmm.
and yeah, there was a job posting, I think, from
Hmm.
Lingua. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think
Okay.
that was it. And I just sent out my application.
Okay. Fantastic.
Then yep, and then I was on a plane to Germany, to Halle, to this place. I looked it up,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't. I knew one person in Leipzig. I had one friend who we became friends when she was studying here, but I knew
Okay.
no one, and I had to look it up on this map. I
Okay.
said, well, it's close to Berlin, it's not far from Dresden, and yeah, here's this little place called Halle.
So when you landed in Halle, do you remember your first impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was exciting. I just remember being on the plane and sort of the quality of the sunlight. The sun was just rising. We're above the clouds, and feeling this feeling of anticipation. And then when I landed in Halle, it seemed like friendly.
Hmm.
It seemed a warm place to get to know. Wasn't this huge city where you feel immediately lost.
Right.
It already felt a little familiar, though obviously it was my first time being in Halle and I knew nothing about it.
Uh-huh.
So
I love the marketplace in Halle. I like the medieval Gothic like church and like it has like this well-defined marketplace. And when I first went to Halle, I had a friend who lived there as well. I was
yeah,
really I was really impressed with Halle. I actually like that city a lot.
yeah.
And I enjoy
It's
going there. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really there's so much history and culture in this
Hmm.
region and even connected to Halle
Hmm.
that it's like each moment I discover something new about Halle, and it has been fascinating over these years that every time I think I know something about Halle, I discover something more.
Okay.
Just to say about the cobblestones,
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's wonderful, and especially when you're standing there in the market, and it's especially during the winter markets, it's wonderful.
Hmm.
But the ice on those cobblestones are treacherous to walk on, and I've ruined so many pairs of shoes with the heels getting stuck in those cobblestones. So it looks, romantic and everything, but practically it's really difficult walking on those cobblestones sometimes.
So in 2009, did you have any uh, German language skills when you came in 2009?
I had taken a German course at university,
Hmm.
but I just knew a few words.
Okay.
And so I basically had to learn German.
Okay.
And it was an interesting it was an interesting kind of undertaking to be able to try and learn German.
And what
Um,
was that process like? Did you, how did you go about learning German? I guess that's a better question.
yeah. Well, I don't think I had a very structured approach.
Okay.
I just felt, okay, these few words can carry me, and I just
Hmm.
started picking it up as I went on, like do my shopping, and so
Hmm.
all the words were there in German. I would watch television shows. My favorite shows were Das Perfect Promi Dinner
Okay.
and Verbotene Liebe. I think it was a soap opera. And so I would just watch different shows to try
Hmm.
and familiarize myself, immerse myself in hearing the language. And cooking shows were great
Okay.
because if they said rühren, then they would show you that they're stirring something. Or if they say olivenöl, then they hold up the bottle of olive oil. So
Right.
this was great. And then you go to the grocery store and all the signs are in front of the fruits and vegetables, so you can
Hmm.
see what it is and you can learn the words. And so I started it that way.
Okay.
And then with a few colleagues, we tried to get a structured course,
Hmm.
but then, you get sort of caught up with teaching and you don't have many hours to devote to a course. I think
Right.
in Lingua helped us with that, offered us a little bit of German with one of the German teachers.
Hmm.
But it was like, always a kind of thing where I had to put off my German learning. And then I found a course at the university, and something always kind of interfered with this more structured approach. So
Okay.
I just found that I had to, so every now and then I'd have a bit of structure, and then I would pick it up along the way. Yeah.
I mean, being immersed in the city, being immersed in the culture, in the country, that probably helped out a lot, like more than we think, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't speak German, and but my comprehension skills are not okay. Maybe A2, basic, right? But
Yes.
I mean, now I find like I had a conversation with our manager the other day.
Yes.
She was speaking to me in German. I understood what she was saying. I was responding in English. She's responding in German. So my comprehension is like it's not zero, but I don't speak.
Yeah, it uses a whole other part of the brain. I think my comprehension far surpasses my sometimes use of the language, but I think the brain is constantly creating these connections.
Mhm.
And so I feel like even though my, I guess, structured, more academic approach is not there,
Mhm.
it's like my brain is understanding and sort of running its own mechanism, its own motor, so that I'm picking up these words somehow in the right order and
Okay.
putting them together. So when I communicate with friends and I write, and I'm like, I'm not even thinking about it, I'm just writing something and it comes out right, and I say, oh, they haven't corrected me, so I must be right.
Mhm.
So my brain continues to learn even while I feel I'm not really learning. I don't know how to explain that, but
Yeah, that makes perfect
I
sense.
think if my language skill has grown since I've left Germany somehow without trying. I try to listen to something in German every day.
Okay, that's nice.
So, yeah.
When you arrived, did you live by yourself or did you live with roommates?
Okay, yeah, this is interesting. I said, I need to find my own place.
Okay.
So yeah, at first I found a temporary place, but
Hmm.
that was just myself. And then one of my friends helped me find an apartment.
Okay.
And so that was also an important step, because then you knew you were really going to be staying. I only ever thought I was going to stay for 1 year. I said, I'll try it out,
Okay.
because I was offered this job in South Korea. I said, I don't know if I should be here or in South Korea, or if Germany will even work for me.
Hmm.
So I had bought a return ticket, and my return date was like a year from from the date that I arrived. And
Okay.
I said, if it works out, I stay. If it doesn't work out, I have my return ticket.
Okay.
And then,
That's a safe plan. Yeah.
yeah. And so then 9 years later, I
I
was
guess it
there. It worked out.
I guess it worked
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
So
it's a big,
I mean the office in Lingua, the office is right downtown, right? It's right in the marketplace. It's a great location.
it's a great location.
Did you enjoy walking to work every day? Like going through I mean, it just because you're walking in the center every single day, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I enjoyed walking every day. It took me maybe 10 minutes, and
Hmm.
everything that I needed was within a certain circumference. Like
Okay.
I didn't have too far to go in either direction. All the things important to me were 5 or 10 minutes away, no
Mm.
more than 15 minutes away. And so I enjoyed walking in every morning. Sometimes I ran in because I started running
Okay.
when I had never been a runner before. But one
Nice.
of my colleagues, who's since moved back to Great Britain, had challenged us, me and another an American colleague of ours. Hey, why don't we start running? And then we can do a marathon. And in Lingua actually was helpful in sort of my growth or journey and growth as a runner, because we
Nice.
started training, and the first run I did was a 5K.
Okay.
And it was in Lingua, who knew that there were several of us who were interested in sports and we were running. And so they said, came in one day, there was this big poster about an airport run,
Hmm.
and who would like to sign up, and they would support us in that. And so they had t-shirts made for us, and a bunch of colleagues came out to root us on. And there we were running at this airport run representing in Lingua. So there were other organizations being represented by their employees. And in Lingua, it was amazing because it was really that team spirit. And I have always felt like a great team in Lingua.
That's good to hear. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. Did you guys win? Did you place first, second, third, fourth?
Oh no, I'm not that fast. I think so. I mean, like you should probably run, like for instance, a 5K in under half an hour,
Yeah.
And probably 15 minutes if you're 17 minutes if you're very fast. But the whole point is like it just kept my growth. Then after 5K, I did 10K, and then we worked our way up to half marathon. So I did a half marathon.
So you came to Germany, first job, picked up running. That's nice. First job as an English teacher, and picked up running. That's nice.
And running, I would just run by the river. So the River Zala is there, right there. And so I would run before work.
Okay.
In the mornings. Yeah.
So what kind of classes did you teach in Lingua in Hale?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything from 1A to 4A. So I guess beginners classes, absolute beginners, or for more intermediate, and also advanced, or people who wanted to brush up their skills or prepare for job interviews. I mean, I've even taught young people who have come, because they need to make up an extra course for their school, and so now they have to do a presentation, and we kind of coach them through that. So I guess I've been able to teach the whole spectrum,
which did you like? Yeah, which did you find maybe not better to teach, but which did you enjoy teaching more, like business English courses or just general English courses?
Oh yeah, it's true. I mean, in both. I mean, everything that I, progressed into, I enjoyed. And then I would prepare people for the exams, for the TELC exams, and of course, that in the qualification. To do that.
I did one yesterday.
You did.
I did a B1. Yeah, I did a B1 TELC test yesterday with the student. He finished from the Arbeitsamt. Yeah, and he was B1, so it was good.
Okay, and is that still being done online, Scott, or was it virtual?
We have shifted a lot of courses to online, but some courses are still face-to-face.
Yeah.
I'm still driving to.
Well, that's good, and things are opening up more.
Yeah. I'm driving like 2 or 3 times a week to businesses, and our other colleagues are also traveling to businesses. So it's not back to 100%, but it's getting a lot better. Yeah. So in your 9 years of working with Lingua, do you have any memorable stories that you would like to share?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few. I'll give you a few, and you'll see which one you could keep. But I almost wanted to talk about, when we talked about running, a funny story, because as much as you teach the students, you learn from them as well. And I would always talk about the Obamas, Michelle and Barack Obama, and just to encourage the students, I would say, yes, we can. You're doing the unit on can, able to, and so I would write on the board, yes, we can. So one of my students or clients said to me one day, I think somebody he knew worked for MDR, and said, they are looking for someone at the Opera House in Halle to play Michelle Obama. And and they said, I think you need to go there. And I said, well, I don't know. And they said, you should go.
Okay.
So I thought about it, I kind of was like, wow, how would I do this? This is like so random.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, why not? It was a Friday afternoon. I walked up to the opera house and to the stage entrance, and
Mm-hmm.
so the security guard opened, and I said, well, I hear you're looking for someone to play Michelle Obama, and so I'm here to inquire about that. And he said, oh yes, I know. I will give you the name of the publicist and the phone number. So they gave me the name of the publicist and the phone number, and I went home. And well, I think it was sitting on my table the next day. I said, okay, maybe I can call now. So I called the publicist,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, yeah, I hear you're looking for someone to play Michelle Obama. They said, yes, we want to meet with you. When can you come in? So can you come in on Monday? So I said, okay. So after my classes at Lingua, again, I went up to the opera house, wearing my sister's favorite dress.
Okay.
It was covered with flowers, And I walked in to the I guess to the room,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just looked. So there was the artistic director, the publicist, and an assistant. And when I walked in the room, they said, Michelle. And they started talking to me about a few things and how would I like to, join and so on. And so I said, okay, I'm on board. And they sort of squirreled me through the streets, and everything was like top secret. And so here I was going to be Michelle Obama. So it came now the first night that I was to be on stage.
Okay.
And I only had one line, and they had a guy from Colombia playing Barack Obama, but
Okay.
he had no lines, and but I had one line.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to tell you that line in a minute. It's very
Okay.
funny.
Yeah, of course.
And so the line is, where are we? This is not Leipzig Airport. And who is this man? So that was my one line. And then so I would have to say that every night for like the next or 2 or 3 nights,
Mm-hmm.
whenever the performances were, they were scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 1 year. But
Wow.
the point is that the very first opening night was the only performance which I told them in advance I will not be able to make the opening performance because I'm already scheduled for something that I cannot change. So they put somebody else in the role, and I think they used Max Factor bronze makeup and put her on for that one night. And you know what that event was that I could not change? It was the airport run in Leipzig.
Really?
Really. So here I am doing the airport run, and my line is, where are we? This is not Leipzig Airport, and who is this man?
So what was the play about? I mean, like,
well, it was called Die Blume von Hawaii.
Okay.
So it was like a micro or like small operetta, and they had rewritten little parts, I guess, just to make it feel fresher and more relevant. So they wrote in this part
where the Obamas are
with the
visiting.
Obamas.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I had bodyguards on stage, my own dressing room. And we even went to Switzerland. We toured like in Winterthur, and I was in Zurich. And
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a big thing. I mean, you had to do this every night for 1 year?
Yeah, I wouldn't say every night. So it turned out like maybe some weeks it was maybe twice that week, and then for a few weeks nothing. But I mean, it went according to the program schedule for the opera house in Halle.
Okay, so you got to travel to different countries. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I got to travel.
And just saying like 3 sentences.
3 sentences. And I had bodyguards on stage. That was part of the scene, very dramatic. And they walk on with black suits, and they look like men in black, and the sunglasses. And one of the gentlemen also was from Canada who played my bodyguard. So
interesting.
And that was the one line for an entire year.
Well, congratulations. You are a opera star.
So really, getting into the community and teaching, and in Lingua, you can't help but integrate yourself into the community. You're teaching people who are citizens of the country, and in some way there's that social element where you're able to integrate, and that's very important.
Yeah, that's actually a really nice segue into the next question. Like how did you enjoy your life living in Hale?
Yeah, there were things to get used to it. I mean, first again with the language, being able to shop and not having the vocabulary or the words.
Right.
And I just remember going into an organic store, and I wanted to find an item, and I didn't know the word.
Okay.
So it's something I always talk about with the students. Like, you can't give up. There are different ways to describe, like, use the words that you have.
Right.
And then when you're failing that, you can always mime or draw a picture or something, but you can always be communicating.
Right. Did you use your smartphone at all? Like showing pictures, or like, I don't know if Google Translate was a popular application back then.
Yeah, the smartphones were just coming in 2009, but definitely it's something I could use later on. But so how I did it was, so here was this object, this vegetable I was looking for, and then with my words in German, I said the equivalent of I want a vegetable, or I'm looking for a vegetable, and it's orange, and you find it in October. And she says, Kürbis.
Yeah.
And she ran with pumpkin.
Yeah.
And she ran and got a pumpkin. And I was like, well, I'm living what I'm teaching my students.
Fantastic.
So,
fantastic. Did you travel back home did you visit your family back home every now and then, or like once a year, or once every 2 years?
Yeah, I would say it's more once every 2 years.
Okay.
I think a lot of American colleagues, they traveled back maybe every year. My Australian colleagues were like the Canadians. We understand that the flights are quite expensive, and it's a longer distance. And so I would say once every 2 years.
Okay.
And then culturally, I mean, navigating the paperwork in Germany, this extreme paperwork and the tax system, all these things you had to get used to. Like, we have the same thing here in Canada, but what would take you maybe 10 minutes suddenly would take you half an hour or an hour to fill out a form or read a letter. And then you need help. With that. And then your friends tell you, and these are German friends, and they're like, this is different. We don't understand this. I said, how do you mean you don't understand that? You speak German? Well, no, it's different. It's contract language. It's just different. And it's a formal type language. And so all good advice for anyone moving there is get a good tax accountant, a good tax specialist to help you with your taxes.
I've done the same thing. I've showed documents from the Finanzamt to my German friends, and they're like, I don't understand what this means. And I was like, okay, I don't either.
Yeah, exactly. You have this exact same, experience with that. Yeah.
But I do have a good accountant, so you're right. That I don't worry about the taxes at all.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good when you can find that out early.
Yeah.
So so these kind of things that it was taking you longer to do the things that took you a very short time.
Sure. Okay, so in 2018 you returned to Canada. Like, what? Can I ask why? Why did you go back? You said you went back for family?
Yeah, for family reasons. Yeah, I needed to. Yeah.
What have you been doing in Canada for the last couple of years then?
Oh, yeah. So I've also been teaching English as a second language.
Okay.
Yeah. Students who tend to be largely from South America.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, I still continue my teaching
are
until the
you
pandemic hit, of
are you
course.
using the Lingua books?
No, they have their own textbooks. But I think once you learn the in lingua method,
Uh-huh.
it always stays with you
Okay,
in some way.
that's good to hear. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so I tend to, even though books are structured, they give you a textbook here and it's structured in a certain way
Mhm.
within the classroom, I'll structure my classroom more around the in lingua method.
Do you have large classroom sizes over there?
I think pretty much like uh well, pretty much like how in lingua is. Some classes are a little bigger but tend to be more smaller, not more than 12 people
Okay.
or 15 people, and some
Okay.
classes tend to be smaller. And
Okay.
so, it's really interesting because when you introduce the vocabulary, this is why I talk about that I've always been a storyteller,
Hmm.
and I think as an English language trainer, as a teacher, you have to be. Um, so you develop a character somehow at the front of the classroom. I worked with someone who was from the southern United States. She now
Hmm.
lives in northern Germany, and she said she always had her voice, her teacher voice, the
Hmm.
character, which was different from her regular character. I don't know if it's the same with you, Scott, but it's like you have a teacher voice and your inflection changes and just the way you speak.
I keep the same voice, but I definitely have acting skills in the classroom.
The flow is important,
Yeah.
and this is why you need to, so you have a character. That's exactly how I would describe it. That's exactly how she described it, my colleague. She's a bit of an actress. We all
Hmm.
have to be. And then that flow is important. So that's where the storytelling, sorry, my phone is ringing.
That's okay.
And that's where that storytelling comes in to create that flow. So it's in how you introduce the lesson, even for your classroom management,
Hmm.
for the conversation activities, and you're introducing the units and summarizing and or reviewing the units. And it
Hmm.
requires imagination sometimes, and that's where the storytelling comes in.
Okay. So when John first, said, "Hey, Scott, like we want to interview Joni, and she has something called a micro story," and I was like, "Okay, John, that sounds like a great idea, but what's a micro story?" So this is something new to me, and I'm super interested in hearing what it is and how you use it in the classroom. So hopefully, I can also incorporate this in my own teaching activities.
Oh, right. So, I mean, we all know of short stories,
Hmm.
and they're great Canadian writers, Alice Munro or Carol Shields, and they've written wonderful short stories, which are just like kind of like vignettes
Hmm.
of life, usually generally very in the community, social, but it's even shorter than a short story. A short story is a few pages.
Hmm.
So a micro story tends to be about 100 words, less than 300 words,
Hmm.
and it's a mini story that expresses like one interesting thoughts or idea. Okay, so it's fast and it's easy for people to read. Okay, they can instantly understand it, immediately share it, and give the feedback, and then they can dream about it and feel that they can, have new ideas.
Hmm.
So, and then it's structured in a certain way. Their smaller narratives tend to be faster and leaving out like unnecessary words. We teach in Lingua different adverbs or adverbs of frequency, always, very, and so on. And these are the words you want to leave out of a micro story because you only have a
Okay.
short space in which to do it. And so I call on my background as a writer for television, and I wrote continuity scripts, and they would give you timed slots that you had to write the most amount of information in the least amount of space.
Hmm.
So to write the most amount of information in the least amount of space, and you have 30 seconds, 60 seconds in which to do an intro or an extro, it's called, where you introduce an item and create the flow with the next item. And so very important to have this skill, which I developed. What can you write in 10 seconds? We'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
That could take up less than 10 seconds. So having this feeling of giving myself the space to write something that's like narrative with enough information, but being economical with my time. So the micro story appealed to me from that standpoint.
Okay.
And you may have heard of flash fiction, which is even shorter. You can flash fiction. In fact, I read somewhere that the first flash fiction story, which is basically 6 words, was written by Ernest Hemingway.
Okay.
And it had 6 words, and it was for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And the sequel to that story was for hire, giant baby, very amusing. So, okay, I'm not doing flash fiction, but the micro story, I have a micro story of 161 words.
So yeah, can it be about any topic that you want it to be?
Yeah, it can be about any topic. You can choose, usually it's a word or an idea. Mm-hmm. So you kind of generally build this narrative around a central theme. Right?
Okay. And what are some of the central themes that you draw from?
A couple of words. It expresses an interesting thought. So let's say you had an interesting thought. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's say you had an interesting thought and you say, oh, okay, I wonder what a purple elephant would look like. Purple elephant. Okay. You had an interesting thought, that you read something that you said, I wonder how that works. Mm-hmm. Or you looked out the window and you saw, an interesting exchange between people.
Okay.
So yeah, it's expressing that interesting thought that you have.
So this is really pushing creativity.
Yeah, so it pushes creativity, and it allows you to use words in an economical way. And so then you almost have to, so all the words then we're teaching the Lingua students, we might have to teach them to eliminate those words, but there's that negative space, because in teaching them to eliminate the words, they're learning the words they have to eliminate.
Yeah, that's true. Is it, when you say the way that you're describing it now, I'm thinking about like a poetry blast.
Yeah.
Someone on stage, you've got 30 seconds, you got a minute, get it out, get your point out, and it doesn't have to be, like you said, there's no rhyming structure, right?
No rhyming structure.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a good way to think of it.
Okay.
Like a poetry blast. You could get it out there. Yeah.
Are you using this with your students from South America right now?
Well, it's an interesting experiment. I mean, I've just been developing it. So I if you're going to venture into doing that, I'm going to venture into doing that, and we can compare notes on that. So you don't need all those extra words. I mean, of course it's grammatically correct, but you don't need all those extra words. Like I found an example on the internet of the kind of extra words.
Okay, what about adjectives? Are adjectives important?
Well, yes. Possibly, and no, but
right?
yes, but choice adjectives, and not like these kind of filler words that kind of hijack your thoughts, or your sentences. So I found an example on the internet where it says, I read it out. I think that quite probably you can begin to understand clutter by actually finding it in your prose yourself.
Sure.
So those are all the words that you probably wouldn't use, these kind of words.
Exactly.
So, there's an article, and it's called 44 Words to Seek and Destroy.
Okay.
And basically, it's the type of words that people generally fill their not only stories, but essays or reports with that may not be necessary. And I remember in the classroom, especially in more advanced or business classes, teaching people that, using the right words, because there's such a richness of vocabulary that they're learning through the in lingua method, and using the right words and not necessarily using these smaller words that kind of maybe take away from sort of a more efficient or unique way of expressing yourself,
Okay.
And so if you immediately want to sound advanced in English, you got to use the better words.
How many of these micro stories have you written?
Well, I've written about 3 so far.
Okay.
But the one that I'm choosing today is called The Purple Elephant. And I just have this idea about the brain, and how the brain works. So I'm trying it out in a story with this character, the purple elephant.
Are you ready to read it?
Yes. So I'll try and read it as clearly as possible. If you need me to re-say anything, then I will. I'll just take a little drink of water.
So this is The Purple Elephant, written by Joni.
The Purple Elephant. Seattle's Pike Place Market is the home of the Purple Store, labeled the quirky shop for all things purple. It sells purple only items. It's open from 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and sometimes later. If I, the purple elephant, stand still in the middle of the store, you will never see me. Like royalty in the inner sanction of the forbidden city, untouched. Do I attract your attention or hold it? If the brain has too many things to look at, it has to work harder, and then it has to decide. Is it worth the energy to understand this object? Too much of a demanding exercise is never a good thing. Neither is nothing much happening here. Attention will slip and you will begin to look at something else. Just for a few minutes, a purple elephant can stand still in the center of a purple store and you will never see him.
Impressive. Really creative, a little abstract, definitely for a higher language learner, like a B, like a high B1, low B2. So is it a real store in Seattle?
Yeah, it is a real store. And they have it online, and there is one location, physical location in Seattle.
Okay.
And apparently it was thought to be an idea that would never work, but 17 years later, it's still in business.
Okay.
And they sell all purple things. And I wanted to connect that with the idea that of how the brain works.
Because what do you mean by that? How the brain works?
Well, I mean, it's just our mechanism. Well, the eyes see, but the brain processes that sight. And in order for us to have our center, in order to see things in color through our center vision. And I don't know if you ever experienced the idea that when you are trying to look up things, if, for example, you hit a website that's overcrowded with information, and you scroll through and it just becomes too much. So you either leave the website or you click on another hyperlink. And so the brain and how it processes information and how it's able to handle that information influences from a marketing perspective how we shop. And so
I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of somehow touch upon that idea. And I liked the idea of being a purple elephant that no one would see
inside the store. I like that idea. Yeah. That's the other question I was going to ask. Like, who is the purple elephant?
That is interesting. I asked myself this after I wrote it, and that would be for people to decide who is the purple elephant.
Okay.
It's not me.
I mean, that's the beauty of the exercise, right? I mean, that's the interpretation of the reader.
Yes.
This is more poetic, and it is more abstract.
Yeah.
And you do have to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I chose to be abstract, but even if you have a sort of more limited vocabulary, I think it could still work, and you could talk about real things. Like I've seen examples of micro stories, and they're not all abstract. They might just deal with one specific thing in their reality within the world.
Okay.
And yeah, so that.
Like we should write a micro story about Germans and their appointments.
Yeah, exactly. That would be great. Listen, can you write that micro story and share it with me? We can write one together. That was a great idea. I like that idea.
Or there's so many different ideas, right? So
yeah,
could you adapt maybe something for like a A2 B1-ish, like maybe the students that you're teaching right now? What's the level of English to the students that you're teaching right now?
Yeah, I would say it's probably B1.
Okay.
I've had a couple of advanced classes. Yeah, so would be B2.
Maybe like something a little less abstract. A B1 student, a B1 classroom, that should work fine. I'm just trying to think the uses of it, like other than like, I don't know. I mean, if you had a creative writing class or just a creative writing class that day or that week, right? This would be a good exercise.
Yeah, I mean, or you present the vocabulary and you have the vocabulary. Let's say it's a 1B class. I think they could do it like some people, if they're a high 1B, and you present the vocabulary and you want them to be able to use the words in order to remember the words.
So you haven't, okay, so you've written 3 micro stories. Are you publishing them like on your social media accounts, or do you have is this something that you want to get out there to the world, or like what's your goal in this?
Yeah, it's interesting because you're given an opportunity, which is to do this interview, and coinciding in that, like on sort of another path, you're developing in a certain way. So I just started working on these stories, and then I got this opportunity, and I thought, oh, now my paths could kind of converge in some way. And so somehow it's kind of been the motivation for me to grow this thing. And I have started thinking, yeah, how can I present it? I could do a podcast where I just do micro stories.
Right.
And how could I work with it?
You could publish a book on micro stories. You could do some sort of training manual on how to incorporate them into the classroom. There's lots of different ways you could go about this. Coffee house micro story nights or something. That's what I keep going back to poetry blast, right? Like on stage, like at your favorite coffee house. You invite all your students up, the ones that have written like micro stories, and like they present it, and then you have small group discussion, like and then maybe a Q&A session with the author. Like, okay, what did I mean by that? Well, this is what I meant. Well, how did you understand it? And then again, it's from a language perspective. I mean, that's fantastic when you have people discussing different ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And what you say, that Q&A, and it's practicing asking and answering questions.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
It's a great idea. Mechanically, I think you're onto something. Yeah, maybe this is something you should turn into your own podcast or turn into your own YouTube channel, right? Like having people read
Yeah.
micro stories from around the world, like as an ESL activity. And then you can get into like more of like the grammatical aspects of it if you want to, or the creativity aspects of it. I mean,
Yes.
it's limitless, right? I mean, that's the beauty of today's online world.
Yeah,
But you could,
exactly.
but you could,
Punctuation too.
yeah. I mean, you could specifically use it as an ESL like focus
Yes.
if you wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
That's up
something
to you. Yeah.
exactly, and it's something current and fresh. Sometimes people it feels intimidating. Okay, let's write a story about that, or let's write an essay. But if you say we're going to do a micro story where we take a certain amount of words, even collectively as a group of students, where we just collect words and then everybody has to use the words in the same way, or maybe some of them start a story and pass it to the next person who continues it and the next person on, and collectively as a class too. So it's not as intimidating for someone who is maybe in a lower learning level, like at a 1B or something.
Right. So I could see like, yeah, give like 10 or 15 vocabulary words, introduce those vocabulary words, however you want to introduce them.
Yeah.
Maybe have a theme, right? Just a little bit of guidance.
Yes.
And let students take off,
Yeah.
Yeah, language level is going to be important here, but you're right, it's not restrictive. That's the point. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always the amount of like, that Scott, right? In the classroom, there's always the amount of how much assistance do you give the ones that need it more, and to sort of like set it up so that they have a good foundation and sort of coach them through it. So it's just important is the exercise, like the process, not so much the result necessarily, but process is important too.
Do you have a presence online?
Well, I think I'm going to have to create one now.
I think if you're,
I don't even have a Facebook page.
I mean, that's, that's the discussion that you need to have, with yourself. But if you're willing to put yourself out there, right?
Yes.
I think, I think it's just how far you're willing to go and how much, it's a great idea. It's just like, and there's an audience for it. It's just, it takes a lot of work to make those connections online. But it sounds fantastic. Yeah, I don't see why you can't do that. I think you've got something if you just work at it a little bit harder. You can grow it.
Wow, that's encouraging to hear. So, but you've written a book.
I haven't written a book, but I wrote a lot of prose, like in a village in Central Asia with candlelights and I've got a lot of depressive, angry, political, like micro stories.
Okay. Well, yeah, everything is a micro story. Everything can be a micro story.
But it's I think it's a great idea. I'd never heard about it, and now you've read a nice, beautiful micro story, and like I can see where you can take this. Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. You have that vision.
I have some good qualities in teaching, and I think creativity is one of those. And it's kind of, you can get stuck in that rut. You really have to stay on top of your game in the ESL world, and a lot of people don't understand that, right? Like,
exactly.
You have to bring it, not every day, because that's almost impossible, but students know when you're not trying that hard, I mean, like
they can see right through that.
They can see where, oh, you just looked at this 10 minutes before you walked in the door, I'm guilty of that too as well. But I mean, I like to do preparation, because it's a job, that's what it is. It's a job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
there are always those days where you can do more. more preparation than others, but
yeah,
for authenticity, the students, as you said, can always sense that. And they want to remain current. That's why my growth, as when I think of it, how I started out in 2009, my growth as a teacher was always in line with my growth as a person within the community in my life in Hale, and bringing some of what I was doing into the classroom and some of what I was doing in the classroom out into the world. So it just became very interconnected.
It's a very nice way to state it. So are you planning to come back to Germany once?
Yes.
Is that your goal? Okay.
Yeah. So then we'll have to sit in a coffee house in Berlin and read and trade micro stories or just stories in general.
You never know what can happen.
Exactly. And that's always been my approach. You start with something and follow it and then see where it grows, And there's some nice places in Hale, nice coffee houses and so on. And I know some venues because I used to be, I also did some booking as a booker, positions, but those are whole other stories. I don't think we have time for all those stories.
Well, I can see, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, like you wrote for television. I can see where you would have a talent for the micro story. Definitely.
Yeah. Sort
of the same kind of like thinking process almost. It's mechanically speaking, not with the creativity and the adjectives and the meaning, but just like, okay, I need to say it in this amount of, just like you said it, in this amount of words, in this amount of time. Perfect.
Exactly. That's a good way of saying it. The mechanics, because I don't have time. I can't put the word very in there. So I need a better word that explains the fullness of it, because I just have 1 second left. So on.
Well, can we wrap it up? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think as long as are you happy with what you've got? I mean.
Okay, well, listen, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's nice meeting you for the first time. Yeah, maybe for the second time, right? And
for the second time, we have to say it's nice meeting you for the second time.
And I really enjoyed the conversation. And
I did too.
Yeah, when you come to Germany, I think we definitely need to get together and work on a project. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Fantastic. That's a plan.
Okay.
I so enjoyed our sessions. So I wish you to have a good weekend.
Thank you very much. And have you too also have a very nice weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk soon. Yeah.
We'll talk soon. Okay, Scott.
Perfect.
Bye now.
All
Cheers.
Right, bye. Cheers. That was funny. Thank you for listening to Lingua Podcast, live from Dessau. We hope you stay tuned for more episodes.